This is a SandyBoy Productions podcast.
Welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, where we help women remove the overwhelm of living their most holistic life. This is the place to find evidence-based nutrition tactics, healthy lifestyle and wellness tips, abundance mindset, and easily implementable low-tox living strategies so you can rise up to your full potential and protect your family's health. I'm your host, Stacey Heiny, certified holistic nutritionist and better living advocate. Now, let's get empowered with some simple swaps that make a big impact for optimal wellness. Did you know that I wrote a brand new ebook called The Secret is in the Sauce? It is a full virtual book that you can download and have at your fingertips instantly with a whole slew of whole food, plant-based sauces that you can start eating today to make this lifestyle sustainable for you. We've got salsas and we've got chocolate sauce and we've got everything in between. You're going to absolutely love it. I'm salivating just thinking about it right now. And this new offer is inside of the Ultimate Weight Loss Bundle. And it's the first time ever that you're going to be able to see my book, including so many other health professionals' books as well. It's yours for only $49, and you get over 105 pieces of content worth $4,600, I might add, from other amazing creators and doctors and health professionals in this field of lifestyle wellness. This is such an amazing special. We don't want you to miss out. It's only available for a limited time through March 2nd of 2022. So hop down into the show notes before you turn your phone off today and make sure that you can see everything you're going to get for $49. Check out the website, scope through all of the goodies, and make sure that you grab it because, again, this is a very limited time offer. And we have so many valuable pieces of content that I know can completely change your life. All right, have a great day. We'll see you soon. Welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, Kyle. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, Kyle is playing around with filters on Zoom, and he had just had a plant on his head and some sunglasses on, but it's 6:30 on a Friday morning, and Kyle and I decided to have an episode together. My son is in the office. He's supposed to be quiet, and we'll see how this goes. But, you know, I get a lot of questions about backyard gardening. I get a lot of questions about what Kyle does, and we've already had an episode with Kyle early on in the podcast last year, but it wasn't in the springtime, and we're going into the time that people are thinking about starting seeds and getting their gardens, backyard gardens, or like full-fledged farms going. And I wanted to ask the master himself, you, my love, how is the farm going this year? What's happened? Why don't you just tell us all the things? Because I think it's been an interesting adventure with green growers this year.
Well, the year in review. Let's start with what went well. So this year we hired another person to help out. So that really helped boost production and actually help us get to the point where I wanted to be with being able to start some processes and really start to expand and become efficient. So we spent a lot of time building out new beds, working on process that we can then rinse and repeat for next year. So that was a good thing. And then also this year, we finally had some awesome success with our cabbage and fall broccoli. So I've never really had the chance to grow much scale or volume of those two crops. And I think we knocked it out of the park. We made some changes to one of my old cultivating tractors. It's probably 60 plus years old. And it really, really, really helped us compete with weeds and really have a good crop. So next year, or 2022, whatever year we're in now, we're going to hope to rinse and repeat that and add some spring broccoli early, some spring cabbage, and then add to the fall, add some Brussels sprouts, and maybe some cauliflower. We'll see if that works this year too. So I'm excited about the cold crops. Yeah. And then now things are really cold and dark. And sadly, one of our greenhouses was torn apart with a windstorm in December before we left for vacation. So everything in that house was what I was intending to sell at the market this time of the year. So that's kind of a bummer because, you know, everything in there is trash. So hopefully this weekend we can get the plastic on it and get things prepped and start planting again. So, you know, kind of moving towards spring planting. You know, I want to get some arugula started already. Hopefully this, like I said, next week, and some spinach again, and then go ahead and move some lettuce over and get some lettuce started again. And then that way I can prep for tomatoes. And I want to get tomatoes done in late February or early March and crank up the heat in the greenhouse and try to get some early tomatoes. So now that's something that most, you know, home growers aren't going to do. I mean, growing tomatoes in Indiana, it's one of those things where you shouldn't really install them outdoors until almost Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Past 2 years, we've had a late freeze. You know, we've had good weather up until May, and then all of a sudden we get this really hard freeze and it kills everything. So, you know, if you're doing some home gardening, you can start in early May if you want, but just be able to cover it. Have some plastic available, build some little low tunnels, and be able to go out and cover your plants. That way, if we do have a cold snap in the middle of May, you know, things aren't ruined.
Yeah. Okay, so let's back up a little bit there. We're in what zone?
Cold zone. 5B, 6.
Yeah, 5B is what I was going to say.
6B, I can't remember anymore.
Pretty sure we're in 5B here in central Indiana. And why? Let's back up to the broccoli and the cabbage, because I will say the broccoli was ridiculously good. If you as a home gardener or beginner farmer are looking to do colder crops, I highly suggest just starting, even if it's your first year, try to get good at doing broccoli and these storage crops like cabbage, because they're not pest resistant. They're pest susceptible. And how did you overcome that? How did you overcome that this year versus other years? I know the years prior, the broccoli just didn't like the heat. So it's just really temperamental with temperature.
Years past with broccoli, I tried to plant it too late in the spring. So I wouldn't get it in until late April or May. And then by the time it was close to being ready, it was June, July, and it was scorched and it was, you know, bolting and just doesn't like the heat. So yeah, at home, the best way to manage crops that are susceptible to pests is to have some row cover, some thin cover called agribon, or some insect netting that you can put over those crops and keep the white fly or some of the other flying insects away from them so they don't lay eggs in the product. So at my scale, we've got some organically approved sprays that we can use that are bacteria, and we'll use those as needed if we see pressure.
Yeah. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about low tunnels. You were just like, yeah, you need to build some low tunnels. Like, what people don't know what that is. So let's go back to when we started doing the little backyard garden here. And, I have these raised beds, which we've talked about on a previous episode, but they're like 10 feet by 2.5 or maybe even 3 feet, which might be a little bit too deep, but they are just raised beds with wood that we, screwed together and put dirt inside. We put some landscape fabric down at the bottom of it to try to keep weeds from growing up through the bottom. And we put compost in there. And then here's the deal. If you live in a zone like us, where if you've started seeds inside, which I want to talk to you about, Kyle, if you've started seeds inside, or you get plant starts from maybe your local plant sale, which you should look for, maybe your, local 4-H has a plant sale in early spring. a lot of the times you can't put these crops out too early, especially like tomatoes. Like you might have a late frost, and we need to protect these crops from freezing because they won't survive. And then they obviously won't grow in the summer. So how did we build? I mean, I built, and you helped me with just a few little bends of the PVC pipe, but like you could build something to protect your crops as easy as literally taking a pot and putting it over each plant. Like say if you have a raised bed and you have like 3 or 5 tomato plants, you can put a pot over it to keep it from freezing. That is a good way, especially if it's like a black plastic plant pot that will keep the soil warm. Just be careful not to scorch your plant. But what we did was took, what was like the base of it, Kyle? It was like 2 by 1 pine or something. Like, what do we call those things?
Yeah, well, you really don't even need that. I mean, really all you need is something that can bend. It's flexible, and then plastic or something you can cover it with. So even a shower curtain if you have a small raised bed garden. So when I say plastic, I'm talking like 1-inch PVC plastic or PEX tubing, that you can get at the hardware store that's used in homes for like their water system. So inexpensive, just something that's flexible that you can bend and make a hoop with.
Yeah.
And then just stick those stakes in the ground or the ends of it in the ground, and then just cover it with some plastic. So painter, like in the painting section, you'll find like 6 mil plastic, 4 mil plastic, 2 mil plastic, just anything like that'll keep the cold weather out and the wind from damaging the crops early on in the season. It'll also generate a lot of heat quickly. So, as the sun comes up, it'll start to heat up that area in the soil. And at some point you may want to take that plastic off during the day.
Yeah. So, I mean, for people who are doing the little raised bed gardens though, like, and their compost is like super movable, and these like pipes, these like plexi or flexible little like tubes that you're talking about to make a hoop with, it might not stick in the soil. So if it doesn't stick in the soil, you guys can just buy like some 1x2 really cheap wood and kind of screw together like not a triangle, like a rectangle or a square, and then screw the tubes to the edges to each side and make, a half circle. And that creates something that you can put your plastic over. Hopefully that makes sense. It looks like a greenhouse or a hoop house that you would see out on farms, but it's just a little mini version of it. And what I liked about that is that you can just literally take the whole thing off and on. And it was clunky and cumbersome, but it worked and it did the job. So that is something that for backyard gardeners, if you're really wanting to get ahead and have the best garden in your neighborhood, making sure that you're protecting your crops and getting them in early is something that you can do to get ahead. It was over a decade ago when I first discovered a plant-based diet. There was next to nothing to read and learn from. In fact, I got my hands on a book called The Kind Diet from Alicia Silverstone, and then I watched a documentary with Avril Lavigne in it called Fast Food Nation, and everything changed in my life. But I still felt so confused. I was lost and discouraged, and I had no idea other than those resources on where to start. I just wanted to feel better. I was tired of over-exercising and minimizing what was on my plate and feeling like I could only eat a small amount of food to feel well and to reach my ideal weight. But how I wish I had had something like this that I'm going to tell you about right now. A whole bundle of brilliant content from people who have already done the trial and error and want to teach how it can be done properly and sustainably. The Ultimate Weight Loss Bundle is here for you to give you the tools you need to lose weight healthfully, without extremes, without diet shakes, without all of the supplements, in a natural way. This is part of holistic living and what I teach you every day. We have to find a balanced approach to eating well so that we can have long-term success and feel well while we impact the people who we know we are created to impact, right? So guess what? The Ultimate Weight Loss Bundle is here for you to give you the tools, again, that you need. It ends on March 2nd. You only have until March 2nd to get this. Only a handful of hours are left in this entire bundle. We really don't have much time. So make sure that you click the link, show notes, and get your hands on this bundle that has over $4,600 worth of content for only $49 and well over 1,000 recipes so that you'll always have ideas. And did I tell you, there's a ton of doctors in this bundle. So you're getting good, sound advice, and it's not just another diet fad, okay? This is very sustainable weight loss and weight maintenance and just feeling better in your body. We've even got things like exercise and mindset work and organizational tips and tricks in this bundle. So again, click the link before this episode even ends and make sure that you get your hands on the ultimate weight loss bundle. I know that you're going to find so much value, and this is going to kickstart you into a better way of living today. All right, back to the show. All right, so let's talk a little bit, Kyle, about what do we do if we want to start our seeds inside instead of going out and having to buy all of our plants for like 4 or 5 times the cost if we want to start our backyard garden or a small farm?
Well, those are two different things. So if you're going to start a small backyard garden, the easiest way to do it is to go get some small plant trays at the hardware store or your local plant store, right? They're called 10-20 trays is what they're typically called. And they can come with cells in them. So sheets of cells that they could be 36 count, 72 count, 96 count, et cetera. They come in different sizes. So for most home gardeners, like a 72 or a 50 cell size is a good start. So the larger, the better for larger plants, like a 50 cell might be a good place to start for peppers and tomatoes, for example. Or 72s are pretty much good for almost everything in a home garden. So you'll start those with some potting soil and, put your seeds in it and then get them ready to go, and then put them on a baker's rack or put them in a window. If you have a baker's rack, get some shop lights, just inexpensive shop lights. You don't have to buy anything expensive. We use some inexpensive LED lighting that was found on Amazon, and just keep the lights close to the top of the plants. Yeah. So as they germinate, you want to keep them close. If they're LED, they won't scorch. They won't burn the plants. If they're compact fluorescent, you may have to pay attention to how close the plants get. Like if they touch the light bulbs, they might burn the leaves a little bit, but keeping them in light for, 12 to 16 hours a day is a good way to do that. So, yeah. And it doesn't have to be anything expensive. Put it in a windowsill if you don't have any extra lights or room or a baker's rack to put things on. Here I built a baker's rack that's six trays, I think, with 2 LED lights for each section. And that holds 4 trays. So it's at 24 trays at one time that I can start, and that's one rack.
Yeah. So what do you mean by when I said, if they're a backyard gardener or beginning farmer, why is that different?
Well, if you're a backyard gardener or if you're a beginning farmer, you're going to have to approach it differently because you just won't be able to grow enough food, to sell at that scale.
If you're talking about selling at a farmer's market, got it. But I mean, if they want to just have a small farm for their family, it would be the same thing. You're going to be starting the seeds the same way as if it was a backyard garden or if it was just, a small farm for growing food for your family.
Right. So, and that high tunnel idea we talked about is something you can do once there's a less of a threat for poor weather. You can just maybe make a little low tunnel outdoors and put your plant trays in that low tunnel outdoors so that you don't have to use artificial light. You can just let the sun do its job. Right.
And that brings me to the point, like, what do you feel? I remember when I was doing these backyard, our beds and really trying to not fail at the backyard garden thing, like I got really obsessed with starting the seeds inside, making sure that they're not leggy, which is why Kyle said to keep the lights close to the plants. So when you see the seeds pop out of the soil, you want to be sure that those grow lights, if you're using them, are like 1, 2, maximum 3 inches away from the plant. Otherwise, the plant is going to reach really, really hard to get to the light, and it's going to get leggy and weak. So we want to make sure that the plant is very close to the light, and then you can move the light up as the plant grows. But then I got really obsessed with hardening off the plants. Like, I know that, how do you feel about that? Because what that means is you take the plants from an indoor setting and put them outside, but we have to do it just for a few hours a day until they're acclimated to the outside weather. Do you have any suggestions for people that like maybe they work a 9-to-5 job and they're not going to be able to babysit their plants, but they want to make sure that they're going to survive going from an indoor setting out to an outdoor setting when it's time to plant them?
Sure. It doesn't take long. I mean, you don't have to go set them out for half a day. So, if you get home from work and there's still some sunlight and a little bit of a breeze, take your plants, set them outside for a couple hours, and then bring them in. So it's just a little bit, you want to shock them. I don't know if shock's the wrong word, but train them to the difference or the changes in the environment. If you're starting these in your house, they're 68, 72 degrees, whatever, and no wind. So by moving them outside for a couple hours, it allows them to start to harden. I can't think of the word I want to use, but
harden off.
Become accustomed to the changes in temperature, and actually the breeze or the wind that moves across them actually helps strengthens the plants. So it's almost like going to the gym, like it kind of gives them a little bit of a workout. So
yeah, exactly. It's like training a muscle. Like you just have to do a little bit at a time, or like training your gut microbiome to start eating whole plant foods versus the processed foods that we might be accustomed to. So little by little. And how long would you say to do that? For like a week, and then it's good to go?
Yeah, probably a week.
Keep the plants outside after that. They have to just get strong enough to be able to survive outside. So that's just something to note. Make sure that you don't take your indoor plants that you've worked so hard on sprouting and germinating, and then take them straight outside and expect them to survive. That's why it's also so important to keep them protected from the wind with these little hoop house or little low tunnel situations. You can also look into buying little greenhouse boxes. That's another option if you have a very small backyard and you want to be sure that you're protecting your plants. That is something that you can look up like on Amazon or Etsy. I've been seeing a lot of people on Facebook Marketplace selling lifted raised beds that you don't even have to put down on the ground, but they're just like on legs. So that's something that you could look into doing as well. All right, Kyle, what crops do you suggest that people start? If you had to just off the whim, I know you didn't study for this, but like off the whim, maybe 4 or 5 things that people can start for their backyard garden in a seed tray right now. And it's February, by the way. Oh, it's almost February.
Well, we're not quite there for tomatoes, really. So you may want to wait another month before you start your tomatoes. You can do cabbages, broccoli, some of those cold crops. Those would work.
Yeah, let me interrupt you first with the cold crops again, because what you said is that you put them in the ground too late, which was like April, right? Or something like that. Maybe May.
I don't remember that. Here in Indiana, we get little windows of opportunity to plant, and then it gets really wet for the spring, and then you can't do anything until it dries out. So I don't remember if it was April or May, but yeah, it was way too late.
Okay, but there are cold crops, and those cold crops,
COLE, cold
COLE,
crops.
right? But they're also AKA cold crops, like they thrive in colder weather. Kale thrives in colder weather. Cabbage thrives in colder weather. They get sweeter, and broccoli and cauliflower. So like those crops, you're saying we could do twice. Like we could grow those twice in 1 year. So we could grow those early, really early. Like those could be the first, and then the last things that we plant. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so you can do 2 plantings, one in the early spring and one in the the late summer, that'll be for fall. You mentioned a good one. Kale is great right now. You can get kale started. It's very hardy. And then kale will last you all year round. So that's what I was first trying to think about. That's why it took me a minute. I was trying to find or think about some of the plants that you can grow one set of and harvest from the entire season. So kale is a great example of that. Rainbow chard is another one.
Yeah.
Rainbow chard you can harvest all year round. Actually in a home garden, look for sprouting broccoli. So don't worry about growing broccoli heads because they take up a lot of space and you get one cutting. There's some varieties out there that are called sprouting broccoli. And what they do is that it'll still have its main shoot, but you can harvest that early. So don't let it grow giant. Harvest it early when it's maybe 2 or 3 inches wide. At that point, the plant will start to put out shoots and it will shoot all the way around on the outside of the plant for 20 or 30 weeks. So you can actually go out and harvest little florets off of that plant all season long. So it's also a lot easier to manage. It won't bolt as fast. So, maybe looking at sprouting broccoli for a home garden, that would be a really good alternative.
Awesome. That's so fun. Okay. So we've got those few things started. We've got cabbage, kale, we've got Swiss chard. Arugula is a good one that it definitely doesn't like hot. So arugula is one that you would want to do more in the colder. All right. So now I feel like every gardener wants to do well with tomatoes. What do you say? Because I know that we grow our tomatoes vertically. If you've got like a greenhouse, I mean, if you're like a full-fledged, like you're going to do this thing, on a small scale for your family and like growing a lot of food, and you've got a greenhouse, you could grow your tomatoes vertically up a string like we do. But what do you say for the backyard gardener or one person that has, 4 or 5 tomato plants? How are they going to get the most tomatoes? What do they need to do to the plant to make sure that it bears fruit? I feel like tomatoes are complicated. Some people get a little bit overwhelmed with them. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. Tomatoes need to have consistent watering. So if you have the ability to put like a little timer on your garden hose or something, consistent watering is very important. They also like fertile soil. So they need a lot of food. They need fed well. They need fertilized consistently and often. So, and not a high nitrogen fertilizer. So if you use a high nitrogen fertilizer, they will be giant plants with very little fruit. So you want something that has more phosphorus and potassium in it, and that will help them bud and bloom throughout the season. Don't constrain them. So a lot of times I see people buying these little tiny wire racks at the hardware store that are, they're real tiny at the bottom. They go up like this a little bit and they're funnels. I think those are really poor for most tomatoes at home. I like, if you have the ability to build a raised bed garden, with some 2x12s, go get what's called a hog panel. It's a piece of fence. Tractor Supply sells it. They're like $20. Stick that in the ground with a couple stakes, and then you can trellis up the thing, up the fence. They're like, 8 feet long, maybe about 4 or 5 feet tall, and they make a great trellis. And then that way you can train your plants to grow up those panels, and they'll hang off and they'll get good sunlight, airflow. That's the other thing. Those little round wire basket thingies, they restrict airflow. So it also can cause disease in the plant. So airflow, sunlight, that method really is helpful.
Okay.
Another thing you can do with that panel, that piece of fence, is early, like March, you can plant peas, sweet peas. So before you plant your tomatoes, plant peas and let them grow up those panels and vine out. And then in May, plant your tomatoes right next to the peas. And, once the peas kind of die out, you can pull those out and the tomatoes are ready to kind of take over. So it's a good way to make good use out of a little bit of space.
Out of a small space. Yeah. And if people can't do a big like hog panel, like you said, I remember your dad did build like cages for the tomato plants. That was more so to protect them from predators. but also to help them grow, I feel. And it wasn't a funnel shape. It was made out of like square wire, but
it was made
like
out of fence. It was made out of old fence, but those were a lot larger. So that's for somebody who's going to have a garden in their yard. And they, they were maybe 4 feet wide, 4 feet around. So 4 feet in diameter.
Yeah. And they were cylindrical.
Yeah.
It was just a cylinder. Okay. So for people to get a lot of fruit, you said phosphorus, potassium versus too much nitrogen, because nitrogen promotes rooting and promotes
nitrogen promotes growth, green growth
and rooting.
Whereas the others, I forget, phosphorus promotes rooting and potassium promotes blooming and blossoms and fruit.
Okay. So do we need to do anything else to our tomato plants? Do we need to pull off leaves? Do we need to pull off anything special? Because I know there's determinate and there's indeterminate. There's two different varieties of tomatoes.
Yeah. So for a home gardener, I wouldn't worry much about it. So a determinate variety is a variety that will grow, set fruit for a limited period of time and then die out. So you might get one major flush or a couple two major flushes of tomatoes, and then they're done. An indeterminate variety is a variety that will continue to grow vine and fruit and blossom and fruit. So an indeterminate varieties, in my opinion, are the best for long-term season growth and for getting tomatoes as long as you can. And then they're really the pruning is up to you. You can prune if you feel like it's overgrowing. But really pruning in a home garden is not really a necessity, in my opinion, compared to like a production grower.
Okay. All right. Is there any message or any tips that you want to leave our listeners with when it comes to starting their backyard garden, and any words of wisdom from the farmer?
Plant more than you think you'll eat, because the neighbors will eat it. And I don't mean like your next door neighbor. I'm talking about like the fox, the rabbit, the squirrel, the animals in the area. They'll eat a little bit. So plant more than you think you'll use. You can plant a lot denser than a lot of times you'll read on the packages. So in a square foot garden, for example, or a raised bed garden, you can plant things a lot denser, closer together. So
except
pack it
tomatoes.
full.
Except
for tomatoes, it takes but pack it full.
Yeah, greens. I feel like the package totally like gyps you. You're like, it's like they'll tell you to plant lettuce like, I don't know, 5 inches apart, but you plant them close and you could get like baby lettuces out of them, and you could get a lot. Right. Yeah. Okay. So plant more, plant dense. Anything else?
Consistently water. So again, get an inexpensive garden timer for your home, hose bib, and just set it to water a couple times a week. Mm-hmm. That way you can kind of set it and forget it.
And if people don't have that elevated of a system and they're just using a hose, what do you suggest? Do they get a shower head thing to go on a sprayer? Should they spray down at the base of the plants instead of sprinkling just the leaves? Like, what do you suggest? Because I do know a lot of people are going to have that question.
Yeah. So always try to water at the soil level if possible. It does a couple things. It keeps, it reduces the amount of potential for like fungus or rotting of plants. So I mentioned plant dense, right? So if you plant plants dense and you water from above and they can't get any airflow or sunlight, they can potentially get diseased or rot. So I always water, if I can, with a drip system or at the base of the plants.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You want to water at the root zone and not the top of the plant.
Got it. Okay. Good. Very good tip. All right, honey. I know that you are itching to go to like Tractor Supply or wherever you like to go in the mornings. And Koen is in the office behind me cutting. I don't think that he was too loud during the episode. I appreciate your time. I know other people will as well. And Thanks for being such an awesome farmer and inspiration to so many people. We love you. Bye.
I'm over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of The Urban Pharmacy. For today's show notes, head on over to theurbanpharmacy.com and be sure to join us inside our private Facebook group called The Urban Pharmacy, where we share inspiration, live trainings, and holistic living tips to help you build community and the healthy lifestyle that you've always wanted. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Before we connect again on the next show, follow me on Instagram at The Urban Pharmacy. That's urban with an H and pharmacy with an F. And I can't wait to hear your wellness journey as we get to know each other better. You know, there's truly no better time than now to level up your life, and I am so proud of you for showing up today. Until next time, be well, Health Crusader.